Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're getting right into a pretty high-stakes diplomatic showdown. It's a real tug-of-war between the United States and the West African nation of Burkina Faso, and it's all centered on this one controversial deportation policy that could honestly reshape international relations across the entire continent.
And it all really kicked off with this incredibly powerful statement. You see, Burkina Faso's government didn't just disagree with a U.S. proposal. They called it an affront to human dignity. Now, that isn't your typical diplomatic chatter. That's drawing a moral line in the sand, and it basically set the stage for this entire standoff.
Okay, so let's get to the heart of what happened. The United States came to Burkina Faso with a very specific proposal, probably expecting some cooperation, but what they got instead was a firm, unequivocal no. So, what was this proposal? Well, it's super important to understand this was not about Burkina Faso taking back its own citizens. Nope. The U.S. was asking for something far more controversial, a policy that has become a real flashpoint for debate all across the globe. To really get why Burkina Faso had such a strong reaction, we've got to look at the U.S. strategy behind the request. This deportation policy itself isn't brand new, but its recent push into Africa, well, that's opening up a whole new front in the global debate on migration. At the core of all this is something called third country deportation. It's a policy, and you might remember it from the Trump administration, where migrants arriving at the U.S. border can be sent to a completely different country, a country they often have absolutely no connection to. It's become a key tool in a much broader global immigration crackdown. Now, you might be thinking this is a unified African stance against this, but it is not that simple. The continent is actually deeply divided, and that's creating this really fascinating landscape of acceptance on one side and resistance on the other. And you can see that division so clearly right here. On one side, you have nations like Ghana and Rwanda that have agreed to these deals, maybe as a way to strengthen ties with the U.S. But on the other side, you can see this block of resistance that's forming, and it's growing. And let's be clear, Burkina Faso isn't standing alone in its defiance. Africa's most populous nation, Nigeria, has also refused a similar deal. And they were really explicit about it, stating that they will not bow to pressure. Now that signals a pretty significant challenge to the U.S. strategy. So what's really driving Burkina Faso's defiance? To understand their hardline stance, you have to look at the man in charge, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, and the dramatic foreign policy shift he's been leading. Captain Ibrahim Traoré, well, he styles himself as an anti-imperialist pan-African strongman. So what does that really mean? It means he's positioning himself as a leader who resists influence from Western powers and really champions African unity and self-reliance. And this isn't just rhetoric, it's the very core of his foreign policy. And this timeline really shows that the rejection of the deportation deal isn't some isolated event. I mean, since taking power, Traoré has systematically dismantled ties with the West. He's shunned France, ousted their troops, and started building a whole new alliance with Russia. So this refusal, it's really the latest and most logical step in that pivot. You know, a refusal like this doesn't just happen in a vacuum. It triggered immediate and pretty serious consequences, with the diplomatic fallout escalating tensions almost overnight. In what was widely seen as a direct response, the U.S. suspended most of its visa services in Burkina Faso's capital. The government there? Well, they didn't mince words. They called the move a form of blackmail, saying it was designed to pressure them into accepting the deal. But this is so much more than just a political chess match. This whole standoff shines a really bright light on the wider ethical and legal problems with these deportation deals, and even more importantly, the very real human cost involved. And to understand that human cost, you just have to look at what's happening in countries that do accept these deals. In Ghana, for instance, there's a lawsuit where migrants allege they were held illegally in a military camp, and then their lawyers claim they were just dumped across the border in neighboring Togo and left completely on their own. This kind of situation has led a lot of observers to argue that these deals are effectively turning parts of Africa into a dumping ground for the West's migration problems. And it raises a really fundamental question. Are these partnerships, or are they something else entirely? And so we're left with this critical question. As nations like Burkina Faso and Nigeria draw this line in the sand, are we seeing the birth of a powerful, unified African resistance? Or will these defiant states simply find themselves isolated? The answer is going to define the continent's role on the world stage for years to come.